Welcome to the Fabricators Coach podcast, where we believe that every fabricator deserves to have a business that not only makes them money, but also gives them time to enjoy it. In each episode, our goal is to share real information that you can take action on and use today, information that, if you will use it, can help you reduce the chaos in your business, help you make more money, and help you get your life back. What we want to do is talk about our most recent article. This will be our July article that came out just a few weeks ago in the Slippery Rock Gazette. My background, for those of you that don't know me, I've got over 40 years experience in manufacturing, business ownership, and coaching, worked with hundreds of companies in a lot of different industries, literally around the world. I coached a number of fab shop owners in the last 20 years. And I've owned my own brick and mortar business. It wasn't a fab shop, but I had a couple of locations, and I know how lonely it gets to be as that person at the top, as that owner who has to make all those tough decisions, sometimes by yourself. It's a big challenge sometimes. I have run a countertop shop for a few years. Brian, you mentioned the transition from B2B to B2C. That was one of the things that we did, is we made a big transition from a 95% B2B to more of a 50-50 mix with B2C. And that helped us survive the recession. So understand that transition, and that's an interesting transition. It's a lot of fun. For the shop that I ran, and for a lot of shops, the holidays are that really big, busy, stressful time of the year. And I got to thinking about, okay, so what can we do? What can we help folks with to make holiday season of 2022 better? And of course, that's not an overnight transition. So we had a series of 12 articles set up for the year. This is number 7. And as some of you have already said, the whole idea is to help you find ways to work on your business instead of in your business. There are days when you don't have a choice, but certainly when you do, you want to do that, because obviously the more that you can improve your business, the more you can work on your business, the closer you get to having a business that not only makes you money, but gives you time to enjoy it. And quite frankly, as owners, you deserve that. So that's really what this is all about, is to give you those opportunities, some of those tools. Previous articles in this series talked about starting the change process, how to use metrics like a sports coach, the relationship between pricing and capacity. A lot of folks ask about, is my pricing formula correct? Am I pricing things properly? And the short answer is it depends, and it has a lot to do with the impact of different markets and different jobs on your capacity. If you want to read any of these past articles, they're available on slipperyrockgazette.net. You can also go to fabricatorscoach.com, hit the blog tab at the top of the page and read them there. And then we also put these out as a podcast too. So you can go to Fabricators Coach Podcast and listen to these and hear what folks are talking about. Got a question for you. How many of you are already starting to see some softening of sales in the market?
I'm seeing a softening of sales. I'm seeing a softening of quoting. So we're still being a B2B shop, we do a lot of multi-unit and single family new builds. And we're still cleaning out of all the supply chain issues and labor issues that they're all having. So we're booming right now. I mean, we are working almost 7 days a week, but I'm not quoting nearly as much as I was even 2 months ago. So I'm seeing the softening for the future.
And it's good that you understand that. A lot of folks don't understand what a leading indicator quotes are. And of course, in B2B, when you're doing multi-family, multi-unit type work, that's a longer lead time than people walking into your shop, walking into your showroom and wanting to talk about or wanting to look around, that sort of thing. But yeah, those leading indicators will tell you a lot about what's happening. And a lot of what I'm working with some of my clients right now is putting together systems to start to track those, so we give them better visibility, so we have an idea what's coming at us. So thank you, Brian. Appreciate you sharing that. Stephanie, Laura, are you guys seeing any softening in sales or in your leading indicators of quotes and showroom traffic?
Not yet, but we're in a little bit of a different market down here on the Gulf Coast, where we're still not recovered from the hurricane. So we have a little bit of a thing going on there, and we still are very negative on the inventory of real estate But I am talking with our builders and contractors who have said that they've seen a slowdown in sales. So eventually that will catch up to us.
Laura, what are you seeing?
I created some dashboards based on what you preach. It looks like June, we quoted less than we did in May, but we still quoted more than we did last June. I do think it's slowing a little bit, but also going back to school, we usually see a little bit of a slowdown. But we're having record months. We're beating last year, so nothing too crazy, terrible.
Okay. Yeah, and that's a good point. It's kind of like, all right, slower compared to what? Compared to the last 2 years,
Yeah.
or compared to 2019. Seasonality certainly is a factor for a lot of folks. Some folks, this is their busy time of year during the summer, especially if you're further north because of weather factors. But some folks, this is a slower time of year. The shop that I ran, usually the tail end of summer, we were relatively busy, but we started to see a drop off in August. And then after folks came back, school started after Labor Day, then things started to pick back up and we were wide open through the rest of the year. So yeah, I'll have, when I asked the question, or is it softening for you? It is a matter of compared to what. And I think a big challenge a lot of folks are going to have, one of you said as you came on that, you guys have been working almost 24/7, trying to keep up with demand. And certainly a lot of folks are seeing a big spike in demand the last 2 years. The challenge I think a lot of folks are going to have is that in 2019, maybe you're used to running a $4 million shop, for example, and lately you're running $4.5 million a year. If things slow down, you may be back to that 4 million or maybe 4.25, which doesn't mean that you've really started to lose money necessarily, as long as you make the right adjustments in that process, so that your costs are staying in line and that sort of thing. So that's certainly one part of getting ready for a potential recession or what they call a soft landing, whatever that slowdown looks like. But part of what we want to talk about is the marketing and sales aspect of things. How many of you have a formal, hopefully written down, but at least well thought out marketing plan? I don't mean an ad campaign. I mean a marketing plan.
Not formal and written down, but there's stuff running.
All right. Now, when you say stuff's running, are you running just ads, running specials and promos, or are you doing something different?
I would say more just kind of branding. We do some billboards, we do radio, we do Google paid search, Facebook posts. That's the majority of it. We try to do community events and get out there like that. But
okay, good. Yeah, that's much closer to marketing than running the promos and the specials. Stephanie, did you have a comment?
Yeah, so we've never done a whole lot of advertising, but over the past several years, we knew that our market would trend more towards the east side of our county and down on the Gulf. So we did start putting up billboards, and we started running ads in the right magazines that get in front of the right people, not necessarily renters, but condo owners and people that will be building for the new construction that's coming on the eastern side of our county. And so we did the same thing, really just getting our name recognition out there. Probably eventually we'll have a storefront over in that area. So minimal advertising, I would call it, but we've never run ads. We've never run specials. That's just not who we are. But we did partner this year with a local television station to do a studio remodel with them. And so we'll have about a year of television advertising through that partnership. And we've never done anything radio or never done anything to that degree. We've never been highly retailed. So this is a little new venture for us.
Okay. Great. Well, it's good to hear that you're not doing a lot of promos and that sort of thing. I talk to folks about marketing sometimes, and they'll talk about all the promos they got going on, and I'm going, no, that's not promotion. That's that's not marketing. That's advertising. So that's good information. Appreciate you sharing that. I think the real key is, a lot of times I'll go work with, I'll do assessments for clients or for companies, people to call and ask questions, and I'll go pull up their websites. And you may want to try this sometimes. A lot of times I'll pull up, 4 or 5 websites in a geographic area, and they'll all look the same. Sometimes I wonder, are they going to the same online source to pull out the same stock photos of kitchens? Because really they all look the same after a while. And so the marketing part really is setting that identity that you want to put out there, setting that message out there that differentiates you. And I think that's a real key to differentiating marketing from advertising.
And can I jump in there for a second?
Sure.
So I just want to piggyback on the comment you just made. I mentioned before, we're in the process of rebranding our company. This will be the 3rd rebrand, actually the 2nd rebrand since the company was founded. I decided to hire a professional marketing firm to help with this process, and in turn got it linked up with a professional website company. And I am blown away with their work. It is, everybody who works in a different industry should be an expert in what they do. That's why you hire someone. And they went around, and I gave them examples of fabricators websites that I thought looked nice. They did their own research, and they had the same thought as you, Ed, that everything's looking the same. It's like the same, it's rinse and repeat. And they took that and they're making us stand out and look completely different. And, us on the call today, we're all in different geographic regions, so I have no problem saying that. I'm going to blow my competitors out of the water with my website, and I can't wait to do that. And so I just wanted to say, to piggyback, to say, it's worth the time and the investment in using a professional, not doing a website yourself, and not using, I think, going outside. I've seen people, I make fabricator websites, and then they all look the same. So differentiation, I think, is key.
Agreed. Thank you for that. Is your new site up and running yet?
No. And as I'm saying that, I'm like, wow,
I was going to bring it up and show it to folks. Shoot, I like the idea of bringing people from outside the industry to come in and take a look. A lot of times I'll spend time helping folks hire key people in their business sometimes, mainly at managerial levels and higher upper management levels. But the most successful hires that I have are people who come from outside the industry.
They helped us really find our unique selling propositions and what's going to make us stand out against our competitors. Because like I said before, we're the largest of the small, meaning we're much more professional. We have a much more wrapped up process than smaller fabricators in the area, but we're not a huge, pumping out 2,000 square feet a day type of a shop either. So they've helped us find some of our unique selling propositions to really highlight, why you'd want to work with us versus the other smaller fabricators who may be able to give a lower price.
Hey, Brian, for folks who may not know, can you just give us a quick 30-second definition of a unique selling proposition?
Yeah. So I have a full customer service department. I have project managers. We have a construction expert, and we have engineers all on staff. So when you come to us, I can't tell you the number of times we help people solve problems in their home from the professional team that we've brought in here. We also have our own designer in-house. So when people come, I don't have to deal with designers who, are interior designers who have all these big ideas that actually aren't, safe or realistic or, void a manufactured quartz warranty. I can't tell you the number of times I have to say, yeah, we do what your designer wants, your warranty is bye-bye. And they get really pissed at that. So I have a professional staff here. I also have my own in-house designer who worked with us so that we can, do it right the first time. And customers really appreciate that.
Understood. You're you're a great straight man, Brian. You're talking about stuff that I'm getting ready to talk about. So that's great. It's great to hear that you're doing that. Yeah, that's basically what a USP, a unique selling proposition, does is it's that message that differentiates you. That's it. And what your marketing folks did was awesome. Go look at do their own research and then come up with something that really makes you look different. Even though, you've got some good resources that you offer, and that's great. But a lot of times with in this business, if you'll just talk about what you do well, it may be the same as the guy across town or the shop across town. But the fact that you talk about it sometimes is enough. Laura, did you have a comment?
So before my husband dragged me into this industry, I did digital marketing for about 10 years. And to Brian's comment, we always told people that you don't need to go to a specialized somebody who understands your industry. So I think you're totally on the right track, Brian. Online, the space works no matter what your industry is. So just because somebody has more knowledge in your industry doesn't help you. You have that knowledge. So that was all.
So Laura, all right. So this is going to be fun conversation. Laura is an expert in the stuff I'm going to try to talk a little bit about. And Brian is actually doing the stuff that we're going to talk about. So I'm going to look for you guys to weigh in and straighten out anything that I say that's wrong and offer some input and advice. Because I think that's where the peer-to-peer learning really gets to be strong, as we've all got things we're good at, and sharing that, I think, is a big help to everybody. So we talked a little bit about marketing. Let me ask you this. How many of you have been through formal training on sales techniques?
No, just self-learning pretty much.
I've gone through training exercises in other industries. I come from consulting. And so I've gone through like business development seminars about how to sell, that type of stuff.
How about your salespeople? Have they been through anything like that?
Have sent our salespeople to many different trainings for across the years. And somehow they always seem to come away with, we sell on price. So I don't know where we're sending them.
Yeah, I may want to reconsider the destination there. Something's not clicking. Stephanie, how about you?
I'm the same as Laura, just, webinars, podcasts here and there. And I've been in the construction industry in one shape or form since 1993. And so thankfully I had good peers before me that, we're good trainers. And I think that to be in our industry doing what we do, we have to care as much about the finish as we do about the closing of the sale. And that's one of the biggest things. And I try to send that message, as we hire new people and we train people. I try to, make sure everybody's on board for that message. Thankfully, have some very good sales designers that work for us that don't want to be the low guy on the totem pole when it comes to pricing. They want to have a reason to get a higher margin. And so, but certainly I've never sent anyone to formal training, not because we don't desire to or don't believe in it, but really we don't. It's like, how do we, the pace that we've grown, we can't keep up as it is. And so our best intentions always go by the wayside.
Understood. And that's a good point. When the market's been like it has been for so many people, the last couple of years, it's, you don't really need to go out and look at that at sales training and marketing too much, because you've probably got more work than you can handle now. And so, yeah, you certainly wouldn't want to spend the time and money on that. But part of what we're talking about is that, this is getting to be, I think we're getting in a situation where we're going to see a little bit of softer landing, a little bit of softening of the market. So we're starting to kind of look ahead and get ready for that. So that's why I asked the questions. Okay. And I appreciate the feedback and appreciate the input. That's really great. One of the keys in the article was to start talking about how to stop marketing by accident and marketing on purpose. Those of you, Lars got a lot of experience in this, and Brian's doing it. You guys understand that the key to marketing is it's going to bring you opportunities to make a sale. And so, if you're doing only promos, marketing only promos, then you're playing that low price game. And in the low price game, you're just selling product at a price, and you're spending money just so you can sell your products typically at a lower cost, because you're in that low price game. And I think a lot of folks just don't realize that they're spending money to allow them to sell their products at a lower cost, rather than what I think Laura or Stephanie were talking about, which was going out and doing the right marketing, setting the right message, the right identity, so folks understand why you don't really need to lower your price. That's a big key, I think. Chuck, you got your audio set up there?
I went to the cell phone.
Okay, all right. You've been trying to get your technical stuff worked out. You got any thoughts or comments on what we're talking about, since you haven't had a chance to weigh in?
I I mean, we don't do any marketing. We've been talking here in the last couple of weeks. We're still trying to recover from that hurricane, so we're still months out in our schedule.
Yeah. So
we see it slowing down for sure.
Okay, so you are starting to see some softening there. Okay.
Yeah.
So you and Stephanie are kind of in that same geographic area. You're on that Gulf Coast, and you've got a lot of built-in demand from the recent hurricane a couple of years ago. Okay.
Right.
And Laura and Brian, since you guys are going through this, please add your comments as I walk through this part. Is how do you get out of this selling spending money to sell your product at a lower price? And I think the key is stepping into your customer's shoes and understanding what problems it is that they want you to solve for them. Brian, since you've kind of been through this, or you're going through this now with your marketing firm, what types of problems have you guys identified that your customers want you to solve for them, and how have you gotten that message out?
My goal with my marketing is to bring them in to our design center, our showroom. And I have found that when they come in and we can engage them and have a conversation and show them that we get to then show our professionalism, our knowledge. They're blown away by the showroom we put together. They see the value in working with us. And sometimes if I really want the sale, I'll do some gimmick like, I'll take 5% off, if we sign today, or, something like that. Of course, I upped it by 5%. So I'm not, losing money on the deal. But really, what people are blown away when they come in here and they see the value against, someone who's doing this out of their garage. And I don't know, everyone else is through other parts of the country. I don't know what type of competitors you have. I have so many, they're doing this out of their garage. It's not against OSHA standards. They don't know from the Natural Stone Institute how anything should be done. They violate the court's manufacturer warranties on a daily basis. And the customers don't know that. So when I start telling them that other fabricators do these type of things, they get worried. And then they see the value of working with our professional company, and they kind of stop looking around. Yep.
That's excellent. Laura, you're the expert. What are your thoughts?
Well, just because I'm an expert doesn't mean that I actually do it. It's like, our homes are the contractor or the plumber's home never has running water or whatever. But I'm kind of with Brian. Sometimes it's hard to convey a big message like that in advertising. We harp on our salespeople to just educate. And, kind of like Brian said, we're like, well, what about this? Did you think about this? Did you think about this? And I think that we try to sell that value, that we have a highly competitive market. We've got bottom feeders here too, who are still doing, $25 a square foot. And we're not those people. We are talking about upping prices. We've already done some of that, but on your training question, I really would like to put together, even if it's just monthly training for the salespeople, because I'm sure you always all have the same problem that turnover is high in any position in our industry. So sometimes, sending people to formal training, you're like, well, are they going to be here next month? But if we could at least just do something internally, like teach them how our saw works and why we have to cut things the way we do. I just think that the more knowledge the salesperson has, they're able to talk to things. And I think that competitors don't have that. So that's what we try to do. But again, that's hard to convey, in a 10-second or 10-word slogan.
Yeah, that's true. And that's the challenge with marketing. And as Brian talked about using professionals, I think that's the advantage of working with professionals. I mean, I've done the same thing in our business is, how do I explain who Fabricators Coach is and what we do and why we're different than somebody else that may be out there. And that's where those professionals are really invaluable in helping you pull that knowledge out of your head and then communicate it in a way that that it means something to the customer. Because at the end of the day, if the customer doesn't get the message or doesn't understand the message you're trying to convey, then you haven't done a good job. It's the old saying, if the student hasn't learned, the teacher hasn't taught. We're kind of doing that in marketing this business. Several thoughts come to mind. One is, if any of you listen to Aaron Crowley's Fab Lab podcast, it's a really good series of podcasts. He's been doing this for a few years. We had a conversation on one of his episodes back in the middle of June where we talked about the fact that, sometimes all you have to do, you don't necessarily have to do anything differently. And I think what Brian's offering is a really high level of service, which is great. But Brian was talking about how, you go out and just explain how the process works. How does this countertop process work? And what are the things that you as a homeowner, you as a customer need to understand, and the responsibilities that homeowner has to make sure that when they're making coffee in that kitchen every day for the next, 5-10 years in the morning, that they're still happy with what you've done for them. What's their role in that? And Aaron had some really good comments on that. So if you want to, go pick up that podcast, Fab Lab podcast, and look for that episode in the middle of June. He's had some really good comments and some good thoughts in terms of how he did that. One of the things I think some of you have talked about, you're making some transition from B2B to more of maybe a better mix of B2B, B2C. The shop that my wife and I ran, we did the same thing back right before the recession. And one of the things that we had to kind of understand and admit and then overcome was, we as you think about it, people have more jobs typically. They change jobs more often than they buy countertops. They buy more cars and countertops, more houses and countertops typically. And so when you're dealing with a homeowner, they can go out and find all sorts of information and lots of resources on how to interview for a job, how to make a good price on a car, house, the whole bit. There's not a whole lot out there on countertops. One of the things that's interesting about this business is when you look at all the other trades that are out there, there are lots of standards that are well-known, National Electrical Code, builders guidelines, builders codes, local codes, that kind of stuff. But other than NSI, there's really not a whole, and what the quartz manufacturers put out there is their requirements. There's not a whole lot out there. And everything that is out there, the average person doesn't know about. So the bottom line is, when we were making the shift in the shop we were running, we put together a lot of intentional ways of educating that customer. And I think that's part of what Brian's talking about, where you talk to customers about, here's what's important in this process. Here's kind of some do's and some don'ts. And this is the role that you've got. And this is when you need to make certain decisions, so that when we set a date, these things will happen as scheduled. Because if we can't count on you making a sync decision, edge profile decision, whatever, at a certain point in this process, then we're going to miss that install date. And now your project schedule is going to be blown up. And so, those are things, educating that customer, that's really key.
One of the things we struggle with here at our company is we've been around since 1991, and we started as a Korean fabrication shop. And I don't know if any of you were from that time, but in order to buy DuPont Corian, which was the premier surface that everyone wanted in their home, you had to be accredited by DuPont Chemicals, and they only sold to established fabricators who represented their company well. And when Corian left the marketplace and natural stone came in, and then quartz, there's been this eruption of chaos, in my opinion, because anybody can bring in their own containers. Anybody can go to a distributor, and they just want to sell slabs. So they don't care if you're Joe Schmo or really qualified fabricator. They just want to move slabs. And because, to your point, Ed, there's no guidelines or there's no accreditation in our industry anymore to say, I know the Natural Stone Institute has one, but it's not widely enough accepted that people are doing it, and so therefore people aren't valuing it. So they read a Google review or they hear from their neighbor that they used X, Y, or Z company, and that people don't know what they're buying, because the people making these countertops in some cases, or in my opinion, in many cases, aren't qualified to be doing so, yet they do it. And I'll share a quick anecdote. I don't want to take your time, Ed, but there's this woman who's an influencer who lives locally to me on Instagram. She has hundreds of thousands of followers, and she pushes products left and right. She got a new kitchen, new countertops, and they painted the cabinets. And she keeps talking about this amazing company, and everyone should use them. Of course, I've looked them up. They do crap work, and they did crap work in her home, but she doesn't realize that. She just keeps pushing them. And in her L top in the corner is a 90-degree cut on a quartz countertop. There's no seam, no nothing. It's a 90-degree cut. And that thing is not made to industry standards. And every day when she goes, or every time she goes and posts about this thing, I want to message her and say, ma'am, you got taken to the whatever. Like, you got a bad product and it's not going to work. Please stop talking about it.
Yeah, the reality is that, when you talk about, I think, two guys in a pickup truck working out of a rental unit, and it's not that they don't do good quality work necessarily, but they're not certified, they're not trained, they're not necessarily buying from a company that's going to make them meet certain standards in terms of the slabs they buy, just like you're talking about, and the influencers who don't understand. I think it's a really good example of the fact that this industry can sometimes be looked at as the Wild West in a way. There's not a whole lot of rules, and so when we take the time to educate the customer, to help them understand what it takes to get a good product, what it takes to have a good experience, and what it takes to be happy with the end result for years and years and years, I think that's valuable to customers. And so I think that's, part of marketing is that. And then, sales is part of that as well. That's what gets you out of selling based on price and gets you asking some of those deeper questions. And gets you into the service aspect of things, serving that customer rather than just getting the signature and getting the deposit. So I think that's really a big key in terms of being successful in this business, is understanding the difference between advertising and marketing, and understanding on the sales side that service is really the key. Educating the customer is the key. And then key with, the key with sales, somebody was talking about sales training a minute ago, is that understanding that buyers will make decisions on an emotional level. They'll buy based on emotion, but then they'll back up and justify that with logic. So the challenge a lot of times is, how do you ask those questions that take them just from the logic? We've talked a lot about the process, the role of the process, and kind of work from the logic down into that deeper level of emotion to where we start to uncover what their real concern is. One of the things that Aaron and I talked about on this podcast was price shoppers. People who come in and want to know what your dollars per square foot price is. And obviously you can't compete with, two guys in a truck in a rental unit. You never will. But, one question is, all right, why are they looking for that price? Some folks are wired that way. That's just who they are. They won't buy anything if they can't negotiate a discount. But there are a lot of folks out there that have had such bad experiences with other types of building trades, window installers, siding, roofing, plumbers, whatever, where they've paid exorbitant prices, got what they think is a sub-quality, subpar experience, subpar product, and they're shopping for price because they're pretty well assuming this process isn't going to work out well too. And so if you can do what Brian's talking about and help them understand how this process can be a great process, how the outcome can be something that they really enjoy, and you ask enough questions to lead them down to that point, to that deep emotional part, then you start getting into servicing the customer and helping them have a great experience. And that's where you really start to win, and price becomes a non-issue at that point.
Whenever someone asks the question, what's your square foot price? I flip it to them and I say, why are you asking me that question? Did you get a square foot price from somebody else? And they often say yes. And then I say, well, do you know their total price? Because that's what I speak in. I speak in the total cost. And then they usually don't have that answer. And then I explain to them that it's not just a square foot price. Many companies go very low on that and then charge you through the roof for cutouts or delivery fees or installation costs. I said, everybody does it differently. It's very subjective what a square foot price includes. I said, so the better way to speak about it is, what is the total cost of your project? And then we could have that better, more educated conversation.
Yeah, and that's part of educating the customer, right? It helps you move from product at a price or being a solution provider to becoming more of a trusted advisor, because now you're helping them understand your business, understanding how they can be assured of being happy and delighted once all this is done, once this experience is over with. And so you've educated them and helped them solve what that really core problem is for them. And at that point, again, price just becomes less and less of an issue. Now, Laura, you've got a lot of background in marketing. I haven't heard you speak up much about selling. Have you got any additional comments you want to add in here?
I think that it sounds like we're a lot like you, Brian. We try to avoid that square foot price. Also, we don't talk about it in marketing. Probably do have a couple of instances on our website where it talks about that, because there are just some people who just want that baseline. But I'm pretty sure I listened to that Aaron Crawley podcast you were talking about, and my salespeople definitely try to say, well, it's about the whole project, and the price is what it is. I think that we do a decent job of avoiding that question. I hope so.
Okay.
We don't, like, we have a lot of slabs here in our shop and that people can shop through. And we don't have them in any particular order. There's not like, here's your builder grade section and here's your luxury section. They're all over the place. We do have quartz and natural stone separated, but when people are like, are they priced different? I'm like, they're just kind of all over the place. There's, I try to talk in relative terms, like your quartzite's going to be on the higher end, or this is going to be a less than that stone, stuff like that. But
the key part in the, how to sell without selling is that there are specific techniques. There are specific ways you can get from that logical level down to that emotional level. And I think, what Brian and Laura are talking about are great ways to talk with customers. But I think Stephanie's weighing in. Stephanie, do you have a comment?
We do consider ourselves as responsible for educating the customer as we are for selling the job. But the minute somebody walks in the door wanting a square foot price, we just kind of have a way of stopping that approach and just saying, listen, we'll be happy to compare our quote against anyone, but what we include in our services, you need to be sure are included in your services. And however you want to go about doing that, if you already have quotes, then we'll be glad to, talk with you about what it is you're wanting and give you a quote real quick and talk with you about the differences of what we're providing and what we're doing versus what you have. But, our process is this, and this is what we provide for you in our services. We try to shorten that process to a very minimal conversation. And if they want to walk back out the door, that's okay. If they're put off by that in any kind of a way, then they might not be our customer. But at the same time, we want a warm, inviting environment the moment they hit the door as well. So we're not trying to turn them off, but we are trying to say our time is valuable. Don't waste it. Really, I'll be honest with you, our biggest concerns that we have from a selling standpoint is the customers that just don't want to hear you. They don't want to hear the care and maintenance. They don't want to hear that a marble may not be a good product for them. They don't, they sign off on all the paperwork and yet they still come back and fight us and talk ugly about us. And really our issues are more to do with that. Everybody's smarter than we are these days.
Yeah. One of the downsides of the internet, right?
Oh my gosh. And nobody's nice about it either. They're just the meanest that I've ever seen. They don't think anything of blowing you up on social media, saying outlandish, horrible things about you that aren't even true.
Yeah. Laura, did you have a comment?
People have definitely gotten meaner in the last few years. 100%.
Yeah.
The digital marketing company we hired, and Laura, you'd be able to, again, probably speak better to this than I can. Their advice on negative reviews on social media, whether it's Google, Instagram, wherever, is respond to them. And you essentially neutralize their ridiculous comments by stating the facts that I'm very sorry that your countertop's not performing as you expected. As we explained during your design visit and through the paperwork that you signed, marble is a soft material that does not perform well in a kitchen. We made you aware of this. And as you remember, you signed the document saying that you were aware of it. We'd be happy to help, find a better suitable material. If you'd like to have a discussion, please contact our office. Anyone who would read that would then be like, okay, well, customer blank is a moron. They signed the paper and they chose it anyway.
Yeah. Totally. I definitely 100% you should respond, and you should respond from a non-emotional state. And even if that, ask somebody outside of it, just write something small, or I'm sorry to hear this, our office will reach out. Even that, if that's all you can say nicely, But I do think that the consumer, as much as people suck sometimes, I think that there's still rational people out there. And just like you said, Brian, when they see that response, they're like, okay, well, we don't know the whole story, and hopefully don't take it all the way to heart,
Yeah, dealing with those things is definitely a challenge, no question. I'm thinking, as you guys are talking, I'm thinking about a local barbecue place here that actually, moved from one town to another. And I don't know the whole story, but I did go back and look at some of his social media comments and discussions that he had in his previous town. And he had a tendency, or whoever was handling, his social media had a tendency to want to argue with customers on social media. And I can tell you that from a customer perspective, it's kind of like, okay, if you're going to sit there and argue with me about, about what I posted on there, I'm probably not going to be willing to come back and buy another meal. And so I think there's a fine line between, I think what Brian said is great. You've got to, stick to the facts and just, be simple and straightforward to be out there. What Laura said is right. You got to respond. I think you got to be careful not to get into those arguments, because nobody wins in those. When you start arguing with a customer, you really have lost at that point. So I think it's definitely a challenge these days. And I think what Stephanie was talking about, you were kind of getting into this aspect of qualifying the customer. Somebody comes in and starts asking about square foot pricing. If you can't help them understand what Brian was talking about with the whole job pricing, and they just don't want to hear that, then knowing how to qualify that customer is really important. That's part of the sales techniques and getting good training in those specific sales techniques. And of course, that also assumes that you know who your customer is. Aaron did a good job in the podcast of talking about how he had actually had a script that his people followed, and it had in the script that had places like, okay, pause, shut up and listen. You asked a question, shut up and listen. You made a statement, stop and listen, wait for the response, that kind of stuff. So that structure and that training is really key. And then knowing which customers are your customers, knowing what market you're after. Chuck talked about the fact he and I have been talking a little bit the last few weeks. Chuck's in a higher end of the market. And he knows, I think, if somebody comes in and starts looking for, Uba Tuba at $25 a foot, that's probably not his customer, that kind of thing. I don't want to put words in your mouth, Chuck, but is that pretty much the case?
So yeah, if they want to have that conversation about square foot, we'll give them a starting point. We're normally around 50-55 to start, and we can go from there. But we don't focus on the square foot too much either.
Okay. And part of that is that, as you start talking with customers, as when they start talking, whether they're probably going to fit into that model of who is your customer and who isn't, right?
Right. Correct.
Yeah. And in qualifying those folks, I think is really important. And that means, again, you got to know who your customer is.
And we also, we won't even go out to a home unless they provide just some basic drawings, so we can just do a range anyway, and if they say, come out and do a template or a measure or whatever, then we'll go out. But we try to qualify them that way first.
Yeah. Understood. Stephanie?
Yeah. So do any of you charge for a preliminary measure, or, like some people are perfectly capable of providing at least a beginning measurement for us to do an estimate. We do a really good job of, explaining to them, this is a very rough estimate, that it lets you know what range you're in for this project. But if they can't and they want us to go do measurements, then we charge a fee that we will then apply to their sale. Should they buy from us, we don't just go measure, for nothing and not have some kind of a way to cover our time, our money, expense in what we've got out there. So anybody else do that?
I'll jump in. We don't charge. We usually say, we get a lot of people that call in wanting a quote measure. And I think our salespeople say, we can certainly do that, or if you can just provide some rough drawings, we can go based on that. And then it's either, I don't know how to use a tape measure, or, yeah, I can do that kind of thing. But we don't charge. I don't see a problem with that, but I think that the in-home quote measure is probably the highest closed sale contact that there is, especially with the right salesperson who knows what they're doing. I think once you're in someone's home, it's a lot easier to close. So maybe you're not getting some of those quote measures because you're charging. I don't know. I'm just throwing random ideas out there. We also live in we're just outside of St. Louis, so you can get almost anywhere in 20 minutes. Like it's usually not, we're not driving an hour to get anywhere. So that makes a difference too.
Yeah. And our dynamic is just a little bit different because our salespeople aren't the ones that go measure. We have a template person that goes and does the measuring. Yeah. So it is a little different structure. We have to ask for a lot of photos on remodels. New construction's, different. That's much easier, but remodel work, especially, is where this really kind of comes more into play.
Locally, the Home Depots in our area charge you to do a template. So we've kind of adopted the same mentality. So we're charging homeowners when we're doing our retail sales, $150 to just go out and to do the template in the house. So that covers my cost of my crew to go out there and do it. And then we can give an accurate quote. And if it doesn't go forward, well, now we're still covered, at least for our time spent doing such a thing. Somebody on the call just said it, that going through that process, more likely than not, that money leads to the full sale.
Yeah, and you can also do things like, okay, if you buy from us, then we'll knock that $150 off the price or whatever, so that's another way to do it too. I know a lot of, and then obviously too, whether you charge for those initial measure trips, a couple of thoughts. One is it just measure for an estimate and a quote, or is it an honest to goodness template that you will fabricate from? Those are two different types of trips. And I know folks that when the economy's been soft or they're struggling to increase sales in their area, will do what Laura's talking about. They'll go out and they'll do those in-home measures, take samples, do that type of thing, and close the sale, get a signature and get a deposit right then. But that's not the template. It's just a measure for an estimate and a quote, and then not charge for that trip because economy's soft and sales are tough, and so it's something you do to go get a higher percentage close. So that's another way to look at it too. And if things get really soft in the next year or two, maybe something worth considering. Anybody that wants to dive a little deeper into this, starting in September, we've put together a professional marketing firm, a professional sales training firm, and then I'm going to do some work on some metrics up front. We're going to do a 10-week, once a week, hour and a half per session, deep dive into these topics. The landing page is up at fabricatorsbusinessacademy.com. We're only going to allow 10 companies to come in. We want to keep this as a small group. But if you're interested in the details, reach out to me by phone or by email. We'd be glad to talk with you. We can even register you manually if you decide you want to commit. But next month, the next article is coming out is that all that this data is good for? And that August article will talk about how to take the intuition that you have about the different market segments that you deal with and put numbers on which market segments are more profitable for you and which customers are more profitable for you. And that's going to be part of this 10-week workshop as well. But we've got an article coming out next month that will talk about it. And our webinar next month, we'll go through that as well. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Fabricators Coach podcast. If you've got any additional questions about this particular episode or anything else, please check us out at fabricatorscoach.com. Thanks. Have a great day.